welcome to a very spooky edition of my channel where I talk about comic books. Look, the only reason I'm doing this goofy stuff with the light is because it fits the theme, which is horror. For whatever reason, I have a hard time pronouncing my H's. Horror sounds bad. I have to think about it every time I say it. Bear with me. This is going to be a rough video. So here's the deal. There's a lot of talk about how we might be in need of new genres. Superheroes are not going anywhere, but they certainly feel stale to everyone. I think that there'll probably be a renaissance. I think that there's good things coming, but it might be a while, honestly. They have to figure out what the plan is over at the big two, and it's a good time to explore other genres. I think one that might become, if not dominant, at least a growing concern, and I think that because it is a diehard fan base who really, it's not just that they spend on the thing that they love, they never stop spending. You have diehard horror fans who have paid for the VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and Apple television versions of films. Maybe they own the poster, they go to horror conventions, and they have press photos signed by Candyman's daughter or whatever the fuck. In most respects, to the existing comics market, it's a lateral move. Because it's not a growth market, it's niche, but maybe more reliable. Or maybe there's just enough variety of horror that it hasn't completely burnt out its fans in the way that superhero books have. So I think that intensity makes it a good potential contender to step in to what might become a void. So that's one reason. Another reason is the specifics of publishers. The reality that small publishers are, even the really integrity-filled ones, are IP farms, right? This is a dirty phrase. Nobody likes to be called that, but it is essential to their model that they own portions of your intellectual property that they can then move to film or television. That's just the name of the game. These people love comics. There's some great comic people involved in the business side of small publishers. But a big part of it is Hollywood. I mean, it just is what it is. Horror always does well. You could have a breakout hit, make $100 million on a budget of $4 million. Honestly, horror is more innovative and more agile than most genres. There's always going to be horror films. Now, sometimes there's a glut of them, like you have an Insidious or something like that does well. And then you'll see, Redbox is flooded. Tubi is flooded with films that are trying to capture the same market. Or, the drunk Mason who is sitting at home on pills market that Redbox appeals to. But even in down periods, it is still a thing that gets made. And these small publishers can move it to studios, move it to private producers, and see some return on a comics investment that may not have killed it in the direct market. It may have only broken even or not. And if they can get something optioned twice, forget getting made for a second, forget all that, it's a pipe dream, but if you can get something optioned twice, even for relatively low money, it starts to get you into the black. And there are plenty of creators who, they didn't finance a home on these shitty options. If the movie's only $4 million or whatever, the option's never going to be very much. But I'm doing a line of horror comics at Black Mask Studios, right? I've done books there in the past, have a good relationship with them. I imagine a lot of books that I would pitch would get made if I took them there. But it's still a process, My books for them have never sold gangbusters. There's considerations. They have to look at it and say, is this a thing that we think we could sell, etc.? I knew with horror it was not going to be any type of conversation. I knew that I would say one thing and they would hear another. I knew that when I said grounded, they would hear filmable. When I would say down to earth, they would hear affordable. These are properties that can be flipped to film or television with relative ease. That's not to take anything away from the people at Black Mask that sell these things. It's obviously still a struggle, but I just knew it would be make their job slightly easier, and I would get to produce the type of books that I was looking to do anyway. It was a win-win. I think that there's going to be a lot of publishers who see the wisdom in horror. Right now in Hollywood, you're not getting a ton of $200 million films based on new properties nobody's ever heard of. But you are getting consistent $4 million films based on properties nobody had ever heard of. So I think that there is a practical reason that horror could be very popular at the publishers. Another reason, and this one may seem obvious, but horror just works in comics. Now, not all types, right? Jump scares don't work. Jump scares rely on shock visuals, surprise visuals, and sound effects. And obviously, comics can't provide those. Even if you turn a page for a big reveal, it is not going to frighten you in the way opening a closet and somebody jumping out at you would scare you. Drawing somebody jumping out of a closet obviously lacks the intensity. It's like a car chase in comics. It can be beautifully done, but it will never have sort of that tactile and visceral feel that film can impart. But comics can do creepy, can do upsetting, disturbing, icky. These are all qualities that comics can convey very effectively. And I think right now, as many horror comics as there are on the shelves, it's still a rather untapped genre. It's still underexploited, I guess would be the way to put it. I also think that it could satisfy some of the genre bending that people are shooting for at Marvel and DC and are maybe not landing, right? Superheroes are malleable. They're elastic. You can put them in a number of circumstances, situations. You can make a horror Superman book if you chose to. But frankly, the reader is not that elastic. The reader wants what they want. And they don't necessarily appreciate your efforts to blend or bend genres. In horror, I think that's much less of a thing. The individual who wants a straight-up slasher is now in the minority. People that want to watch slasher films with some type of genre overlap. And I think that horror comics could be that expressive avenue that a lot of frustrated creators at Marvel and DC have been looking for. Certainly you could do a romance book that is rooted in horror. I mean, Anne Rice made a career out of spooky lesbianism. It is a wide open space where you can tell any type of story, and the reader, and then in the publisher's view, hopefully the viewers later on, will be available to these things. This is my argument for horror being the next genre. I will make arguments for other genres to become dominant or to become the focus of good creators. But personally, I think that horror could be it. I started this channel with the intention of promoting my own work, talking about comics, and then finding a way to plug my material, make sure that people were aware of it. I'd just like to get a very dedicated few thousand followers so that when I put something out in the world, I can hopefully use the conversations that I have here as tiny little springboards to remind you that I've got something on the shelves. This will be the first time I do that. I have a book called Leaded Gasoline coming out from Black Mask. I'll talk about it more as it comes closer, but it is grounded horror, which is not a phrase I made up, I'm sure, but I seem to be the only one that uses it. It is grounded horror about the very real historical fact that in the 1980s and 1990s, southern Los Angeles had, at any given point, up to 6 serial killers, all within the same small area, doing their dirt. It's a fascinating little tidbit of information that I've become consumed by. I've done research. It's based on real events. However, this is a fictionalized account. And in my view, it's pretty scary. It's scary because it's real, because people are cruel to each other. And when you see that in stark relief, it is probably more frightening than any ghoul. It's a cold world, and that's frightening. And that's what my partner Lorenzo and I hope to capture with that book. I'm very proud of it. I'll talk about it more as it comes up. We're going to be doing some Kickstarter stuff for it. We go to stores immediately after that. And it's just something that I think that if you love horror or that type of gritty storytelling, you're going to enjoy it. There you go. That was my spiel. I won't do that often, but seemed germane this time. Horror. What do you think? If we want to make this a conversation, tell me what your favorite horror comic is and why, please. And who you consider the best horror writers. Because I bet your answers would really surprise me, to be honest. I'm pretty particular about this, but I'm happy to read anybody's horror work because I think even writers and artists who don't work in that genre typically have one idea, minimum, that could really connect in that space. And I'm always excited to see it. Anyway, thanks for joining me again. Horror 2025.